So does leaving a lasting legacy matter? It's a question that I've always pondered, right? It's interesting to me that what makes us think that we need to leave some kind of grand legacy is simply driven by our ego, right? And we all have an ego. An ego is essentially a reflection of your self-esteem or sense of self-worth, right? And so as I live and think about the things that I would like to leave, right? When I think of legacy, I think of things we hand down, right? It's just not a monetary aspect, but it's also, what impact did we make? What did that look like? What types of, tacit knowledge are we passing down to our friends and family? It can be physical goods and trinkets. So knowledge, assets, money, skill sets, right? Maybe a carpenter teaches their son how to build, right? All those are various forms of legacy. And what I noticed, at least here in Western culture, in America, is we get so caught up into wanting to strive for more, especially in this capitalistic society. We're wanting to keep up with the Joneses, keep up and be able to kind of flex our muscles and say, hey, I did this or I did that. Look at me. Here's my resume. Look what I did. And it's tethered to and compared to what's been done in recent history. When you ask somebody about billionaires or millionaires, we associate that with what it means to be successful. And what you get from that is that that's one aspect of legacy building, but it's a very narrow perspective or aspect of what it means to leave a legacy. All of the books that we tend to read, at least for the masses, or the information we take in, tend to be recent history, right? What have we done in the past couple of 100 years? And we bounce off of that to determine how much progress we've made, especially from an individualistic standpoint. And what you notice is that you get caught up in this vortex of recency bias. Everything tends to be based on the past few hundred years. And then when you look at all of humanity, when we think about the great engineering and developments, whether it's from agriculture to the building of the pyramids or the 7 wonders of the world, it's all based within this 2,000 to 5,000 year time span. And that tends to be our recurring reference point, which is kind of that window of time from the present to the back to the past 5,000 years. And we praise the recent developments, especially the technological revolutions that have occurred as being the most significant thing ever, right? We're looking at AI as, wow, this is going to be, something even more revolutionary that will transform humanity forever. But we forget, that there have been many great things, right? When we think of legends, at least here in the Western culture, we're only thinking about who did something great in the context of some sports feat or some monetary gain or some material achievement. And I think that's definitely a limited perspective, because what it signals is it's all ego driven, because that's what we associate with success, or what it means to be success. And when we think of certain legends, great heroes, right? In America, in boxing, we might think of a Muhammad Ali. Right? In football, we might think of a Tom Brady. Basketball, Michael Jordan. Or if you're willing to go back, over a couple thousand years, you might actually reflect on Achilles, right? Even though this was written by Homer in the Iliad, but there were certainly figures like that. And when we think of these heroes or these so-called legends, it's limited to this 2,000 to 5,000 year time span. And the truth is, there was all kinds of legends and heroes and wealthy figures and just monumental and impactful figures throughout history. Humans have been around for over 300,000 years, at least in this current form, right? Probably more close to 30 to 50,000 years in terms of modernity is concerned, in this current state of evolution of humans. Our ancestors, homonyms, goes all the way back 7 million plus years if you're aligned with evolution and what the science has to show for that. What that makes me think is there had to be greatness. I mean, think about it. Who was the first person to duplicate and replicate fire? I mean, do you know how astronomically impactful that is? The ability to create fire and replicate it, to hone it, to harness it, right? That means you're able to illuminate rooms, spaces, have some type of light. You're able to cook food, extremely essential, especially for preservations of certain foods like meats, smoked, kills bacterias. I mean, the ability to cook is such a monumental discovery, through fire. Fire, there's so many other things it does. It creates diamonds, right? So many uses of fire. And when you think of chemistry, so many different types of uses and applications, right? But who came up with that and harnessed it? Now that person should be seen as a genius, as a legend, right? Who was the first one who developed the tools for killing animals for food, like the bow and arrow? It's obvious that it was through multiple iterations the evolution of the bow and arrow materialized. However, when you think about it, like there was someone who took the first approach to trying to build one. And the fact that someone could build something so aerodynamic in terms of being able to shoot this sleek, pointed wooden stick, at optimal velocity to strike a target, specifically when it comes to procuring food. I think that's pretty amazing. Lots of ingenuity. And that person is a legend. There's so many things, so many innovations, so many inventions, novelties throughout history, way before time. Just when you think about humans have been around 300,000 years, it's got to make you think that in each of those eras, each of those centuries, there had to be multiple legends in all facets of life. Whether they were some glorious warrior on the battlefield or someone who was the village engineer who kept figuring things out, how to put together things and tinker around. The individuals who developed sea transportation in its earliest forms to even fathom and think and take that risk. I mean, we look at someone like Elon Musk as being this great entrepreneur, but certainly those people that came up with those early iterations of boats, or to dare to think that man can not only just float on water, but travel on land and then be able to do other activities within that boating design, right? You're able to procure food, right? Go fishing, discover new lands. Now that right there, that's legendary. But what irks me at times is when I think about what it means to leave a legacy, what it means to become a legend. Our reference point usually is limited to the past couple hundred years, or up to the past couple thousand years, and we don't ever think to go further back, right? It's like our minds are limited with this governor of the mind that doesn't allow us to really break things up into kind of constituent parts, first principles, going back through history. Like, how did we get from A to B? Even though we're at Z right now, how do we kind of dial back and deconstruct and see how things came to be the way they are? Because it didn't happen overnight. And for all of those evolutions of development in the products we have, in the physical structures we have, from the types of transportation we have, all of those things were monumental. So what is the takeaway? Well, the takeaway is, hey, don't just look at the world around you. Don't just read books that just came out last year. Read books from 200 years ago. Read a book from 1,000 years ago, right? Read the earliest writings that were available from Sumeria or other, times throughout history. Because what it will do is open your eyes to how humans were thinking at those times. What brought them joy? What brought them pain? It'll allow you to broaden in your perspective and certainly add more depth to why things are the way they are or how they developed and who were great figures, right? The only great figures that we have some point of reference to, at least in this day and age, is religious figures, right? When you think of the Bible, written over multiple centuries, first name you think about is Jesus, right? You reflect on the Quran, first name you think about is Muhammad. So it's just interesting to know that we don't allow ourselves to really reflect on what it means to leave a legacy, and if it's even necessary, right? Ego drives most of who we aspire to be and what we want in life. It doesn't make this a good thing. It doesn't make it a bad thing. It just is. It's not right. It's not wrong. Because at the end of the day, it's all subjective. Just like religion. One group of people might think something is definitively and absolutely the truth. Another group might think differently. And what you learn at the end of the day is that these are not good things or bad things. They just are. And you have your own autonomy, your own agency to choose what path is most appropriate for yourself. When you think about people throughout history and who's left a mark, it's usually someone who took some unorthodox path or really stuck their neck out, took big risk, and did something that was just spectacular or out of the ordinary. And when you think about the money aspect, you only know so many people, right? Like even if you go to the days of Rockefeller, if I were to ask you, can you identify any other billionaires or people that had billionaire equivalent assets and value in their net worth? You might be able to throw out another name, Dale Carnegie. I think the Vanderbilts might be in there, right? But this is just going from the 1800s to the 1900s. Who else? Who were the millionaires? Can you name me 10 millionaires that aren't celebrities or royalty or famous people? Name me 10 millionaires. Right? And the truth is, those names, for the most part, go unknown, right? And we're only talking 150 years ago or less. Now go back 500 years ago, right? You might be able to identify certain figures dispersed throughout the world, right? Whether it's in Rome or in Africa or some other country where there was a figure associated with insane wealth, right? But besides those outliers, like who are the millionaires? Right, now go back 3,000 years. Can you identify that? I mean, outside of religious texts, I get it. Solomon from the Bible, yes, he was wealthy, but who else? Right? Outside of religious texts, who else can you identify? And so on the lines along accumulating all this monetary wealth and being remembered in that fashion, what you realize quickly is it's hard to really recall any wealthy people throughout history. There might be like 10 to 15 people you might actually can reflect on. After that, you really don't know. And of the ones who are millionaires or billionaires, they're going to come from your recollection of recent history, right? Less than 100 years ago, probably less than 50 years ago. So what does that mean? Well, to me, it means that, yeah, wealth is not remembered like that throughout the annals of time. Like money is not remembered in that fashion. So is it something you should be worshiping, glorifying? I mean, there's a reason why Bill Gates and these other individuals are giving away all their money before they pass, because they probably stumbled upon this epiphany or this new insight that, I've already reached the pinnacle of this life in terms of, monetary things. And now they're like desensitized, like it can only do so much. They've already traveled everywhere. They've already bought all their toys and gadgets and homes. All they really want now is just to give back and give it away. Not just give back, but get rid of it before they even leave the earth. And it's because they probably realized that these things, for some, may be remembered if you were ultra wealthy, like a billionaire, but for the majority, no one remembers the wealthy like that. They remember the impact. They remember what people did, right? Or something that seems so unfathomable, right? Like, that's why we remember like great warriors, right? How was this person undefeated in battle, right? Miyamoto Musashi. We recall legendary figures in that sense, right? Or Mother Teresa. She's known for showing high empathy and care for the world and giving of her time, right? So it's things like that that get remembered. But in terms of monetary wealth, it's rare that you actually can remember at least 10 wealthy names from 100 years ago. That doesn't include John D. Rockefeller, Dale Carnegie, and sorry, not Dale Carnegie. I've said it a couple of times. I meant Andrew Carnegie, the railroad tycoon. Andrew Carnegie from Scotland, or from the UK, who came here when he was a young boy, dropped out of middle school, jumped into the whole train conducting business. Next thing you know, from there he scaled up and started owning the whole entire operation, including all the assets, right? So it's people like that, those names you remember, not just because of their astronomical wealth, but they also invested into educational institutions and other types of facilities and places that generated impact in society. So, yeah, what is legacy? Is it worth something pursuing aggressively? Or are these merely ego-driven aspirations? Again, not necessarily a good or bad it just, it it's up to you how in depth of a legacy you'd like to leave. And that's going to be very subjective, and it's going to be relative to you and your perspective of the world. I would say for myself, what legacy means to me is, for my time on this earth, did I add value to the people around me? Right? To loved ones, friends, family, co-workers. Am I adding value? Did I add value in some form or shape? Am I able to pass down certain knowledge? Is there any leftover money, life insurance, at a minimum? Legacy is very subjective, and it's going to be unique to the individual. It's pointless to compare someone else's legacy in history or recent history to what you aspire to do or want to be. Everyone has their own path to walk. And so that's something that you're going to have to discover for yourself, because what makes sense for one person necessarily won't make sense for another person. So in that case, we can't just go off of what other people are doing in life. And so that's what I would say. Go after your dreams. Go after your purpose, because no one can truly write that script for you. You have to write that for yourself. And so when defining legacy, just understand that